You know, as we sat there, because you were there too, at Brookings today, listening to that speech, it's the first time that I really felt I understood the Biden policy and economic philosophy approaching these issues. There's a way that these kinds of speeches have a droning quality, even when it's in State of the Union. There's this recitation rhythm to it that even I tune out of. But this speech today, it was laid out so clearly, and it may be that it's all retrospect. It may be that he's describing actual accomplishments as opposed to hopes, that it became very clear, especially with that speech that Mike Memler reminded me of 6 years ago at Brookings, about what this president's approach has always been to these issues.
The clip that you played from 6 years ago, I found remarkable. I wasn't familiar with that clip, and he's literally talking about the very problems that not only did he face when we came into office, but that he's dealt with in ways he described today. And as you and I sat there, we heard about the effectiveness, the progress we've made with what the president calls middle-out, bottom-up growth, which he holds in stark contrast to a kind of trickle-down approach that enriches the wealthy, hurts our fiscal outlook, exacerbates inequality, as opposed to the worker-centered approach that we've implemented to the tune of the kinds of accomplishments and progress you've mentioned in terms of 16 million jobs, lowest average unemployment rate in 50 years, 20 million new businesses, every one of them an act of hope and optimism, the lowest uninsured rate on record, of course, the stock market that's hitting records, helping 401ks get lifted, and $1 trillion of private investment flowing in to make resilient the very supply chains he was worrying about 6 years ago. So it is a remarkable trajectory, and I think that came out of the speech today.
You know, in wondering what the Biden legacy is, you really don't have to wonder anymore if you actually listen to or read this speech today. This is clearly the Biden policy achievement legacy. There may be a legacy in the survival of Ukraine. We don't know the end of that story yet, but these are completed accomplishments. There really is going to be the first tunnel built across the Hudson River in most people's lifetimes.
Well, as you pointed out in your very fulsome introduction, yes, that's certainly many of these seeds are being planted, but they will take years,
yes,
as you said, to reach fruition. And that's also kind of a remarkable thing for a politician to say, I'm not just doing things that are helping you today, his enforcing of union power, his making sure that families and businesses could get to the other side of the crisis with the checks that you mentioned earlier, shots in arms, checks in pockets, reopening the economy, getting back to full employment, but planting the seeds of transformational investments in the U.S. economy, standing up domestic industries that wouldn't be here. Now, those seeds, like the tunnel you mentioned, that could be 2, 4, 8, 10 years in the making. But if they're properly cared for by the incoming administration, and that's an if, those investments will flourish. Now, one reason to be probably less skeptical or cynical about that is that when you've got a factory in your backyard that's being built, or a chip fabrication plant that's 3 football fields long, employing construction workers and manufacturing workers, as you mentioned, making real money, $100,000 a year. I don't care if you're a D or an R, you're not going to want to take that down. So I do think that these lasting agendas, these lasting investments will pay off big.
I think of President Eisenhower, who literally invented the interstate highway system. There was no interstate highway system before him. Did not obviously get completed in the 1950s
right.
During his administration, but because it was a brand new thing, he got credit for that for a significant period of time after his presidency. It's forgotten now. You have to be of a certain age to know it now. You now live in a Washington press corps who believe it is stupid to ever do something legislatively where the payoff to voters is years down the road. They actually think that that is stupid governing because you don't profit from it directly.
Not only does President Biden obviously reject that, because of the actions that we just discussed show that, investments that are going to stand up factories in this country building clean energy, batteries, electric vehicles, semiconductors, and again, decades-long investments that will pay out over the course of generations. But
They're allowed to.
in real time, those investments are as much or even more, he said this in the speech today, in red states as they are in blue states. So again, when the president stood up and said, I'm going to be the president for all America, he meant it and he over-delivered. And that's something that I think you do if you have the integrity, the vision of a Joe Biden. And yes, you're right. In many ways, I think that's probably a lost art.
We're going to need your help on this program next year when Republicans start trying to take credit for this stuff. Jared Bernstein, thank you very much for joining us tonight. And coming up tonight for Fox Weekend.